Yeah, so the first collection raises awareness of mental health conditions. And the reason why I picked that was because from an early age, I've been indirectly affected by mental health. So some of the members in my family suffer from mental disabilities and also physical disabilities. So growing up, I witnessed a lot of shame and stigma that came about, to them. And it used to make me really, really sad. It still does, to be honest. It also used to make me really angry as well, because I was very confused, like why they were experiencing that, because they're just human beings at the end of the day. And then I started to develop my own mental health struggles at the age of 11. So I've been indirectly and directly affected by mental health from pretty much day one. So I really wanted to, with the collection, raise awareness and highlight the stigmas and misconceptions around mental health conditions, because it's been so because I've been affected by it for so long. And when I was creating the collection, I noticed this open dialogue started to develop through my tutors. So I started the collection when I was at university for my final year collection. And yeah, the open dialogue was just stemming lots of conversations, lots of conversations about the stigmas and misconceptions. And it was really interesting because sometimes I was having a conversation where the person was believing in or had thought that the stigma of a certain mental health condition was how the mental health condition is, when really I could then begin to just let them know that that's not actually how it is, this is how it is. So I was like naturally like educating them as well, which was really interesting. And then when I started my business, I wanted to explore social issues to broaden just the area. And with the inspiration for each collection, I conduct interviews. So depending on what the social issue is for that collection, so we're currently focusing on mental ill health, trauma and sexual violence. Before any of the designs are started, I conduct interviews with people who have firsthand experiences with these specific social issues. And they then become the building blocks for the design. So I work from, learning about their experiences, learning and gaining a deeper understanding of, really what's going on and how it's affecting them and how they deal with it daily, obviously depending on what the social issue is. And yeah, so I take inspiration from the interviews. So yeah, turning an interview into basically a piece of artwork that can be wearable. So I've seen this statement like pop up a lot. It's like all over the internet, and there's definitely like people who have really taken the time to figure out if there is like a link. And so I mean, and I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I can only really talk from what my view is of it, and it is just an opinion. But I think for me, from my viewpoint, I think to generalize specific sectors of jobs where like more people will develop a mental ill health in that sector versus that sector, I think it can be really damaging. I think it takes away like the importance of what's really happening. People can develop mental ill health from any background, any any age, and mental health or mental health conditions usually stem from a trauma that's happened to somebody, or it could be genetics within the family. So, I don't think that there is a link between the two. Yes, very heavily affecting young people's mental health. I mean, I think one of the problems that I faced anyway, growing up when I was like in school, this is secondary school, that it's very common to get bullying in school, and before social media, you could at least go home and like escape that, whereas with social media it's like 24/7, it's all the time. It's like And I experienced that as well. So when I was in secondary school, I was getting bullied, and that was like in the school, and then I would go home, and then I would receive messages online. You know, sometimes there'll be like anonymous people like on Tumblr, but I knew kind of who they were, and they're really damaging. You know, to not be able to take a break from that, it can really spiral into lots of really bad situations. I also think that it's quite bad in a sense that I've noticed there's a lot of like filters where like they can alter like your body image, and then you know you're it's just not like reflecting who you actually are, and then it becomes a distorted perception of what you think your body is meant to look like, when really those filters just aren't a reflection of any real body, nor a healthy body either. And also social media can also create comparison. I think we're all guilty of that. I certainly am, because we always think that what we're seeing on social media is the be all end all, and people only really post their happy moments. So it can become a very distorted perception of what we really think life is meant to be. It's partly to do with lack of awareness, definitely. But I think there's so many elements to it, really. I think some other elements would be um, uh, what kind of support system that they have in place around them. You know, if you don't have if you don't have the support from your family or you know, your carers, then it can be hard to understand what's going on your head, especially if you're quite young. I also wonder if maybe there is an element of, if you're around people who believe in the stigmas and misconceptions, then that's all you're going to really know, especially if you're young, like I said. So that can also become a barrier to seeking help, realizing that you need help, realizing that, you know, maybe you have anxiety or depression. And, you know, when those barriers are in place, it can be really hard to push through it, especially if you don't have the right people around you to help you. So it's quite interesting, actually. So I did a series of talks earlier this year where I hosted them, and I brought on six fashion industry experts, and we spoke about fashion and mental health. And I brought on quite a wide variety of people. So some people were quite new in the industry, you know, like 3 to 5 years experience, and then some other people I brought in had like 35 plus years experience. So it was really interesting to hear what everyone had to say about certain questions that I would raise about how we can tackle mental health stigma and discrimination in the industry. Are people open to talking about mental health in the industry? And from what I reflected on from the series of talks is that I think we're definitely moving in the right direction. I think, you know, mental health is perceived in a way that it's coming to light, where, you know, people are beginning to talk about their struggles. But I don't think it's just not regular. It needs to be regular in order for people to actually have the confidence to talk about what they're experiencing. If they're struggling, to just let the let their boss know, so then, you know, they can maybe have a day off or something like that, you know, tailor around to their needs in order to get their mental well-being, you know, to the best of their ability, in order for them to be the best for the whole team. I also remember one of the speakers said that when she's a tailor on photo shoots, she's been saying that in the past few years, this is a woman that's got like 35 years experience. So she's seen it, you know, in the 2000s, and now she's seen it now. And she's been saying that there, some of the shoots have an area for like people to go and sit in and to relax. And, you know, if they're under a lot of stress, they can just go and relax there, creating like this safe space, which, you know, is just vital for the mental well-being, especially if you can just take 5 minutes out, just go for a break, go for outside, fresh air, you know, it's just so important. Yeah, it can just really bring about that collaboration just to a higher level, and then the results are just way more impactful and beautiful, I think. I think it's really important to be in tune with your vulnerabilities. I think it's very hard, like it's not an easy thing for people to do. But I think being in tune with your vulnerabilities and becoming like aware of what your vulnerabilities are can then help make you be honest with yourself, and then it can also help you be honest with people around you. But I would say that is, you know, being vulnerable isn't an easy thing. Like it's something that you've got to do in your own time. Like you should never be like pressured into it. You should take like small steps when you're ready. That's what I would say, because you know, I've only really learned to be vulnerable in the past like 3 years, you know, consciously. So it's a process, and you've got to make sure you're doing it on your own terms for yourself. I do, yeah. Um, I think, yeah, like I was saying earlier, like it can create this self-fulfilling prophecy where um, you think you have to be this tortured artist in order to be successful, to be, you know, a genius, to be like the best of your field. Um, when really, you know, mental ill health affects pretty much everyone. Everyone's been either indirectly affected by mental ill health or directly affected by mental ill health. You know, it's 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health condition. So, you know, it can happen in any sector. And perhaps maybe people in creativity will use their mental health experiences to channel their creativity, in a sense that, you know, they'll use it as a comfort, which I think is really healthy. I mean, that's what I do. You know, I use it to express myself. That's a positive way to connect creativity and mental health. You know, we've got art therapy. It's used all the time for people, which is fantastic. But to but to, like, you know, tell people that you've got to be this tortured genius in order to be successful, I just think it's so damaging. You know, in order to be successful, you've got to be mentally well. So yeah, I think it just really is, it can be very, very, very damaging. So I mean, yeah, so I can't really talk about their experiences because I don't know them personally, but I can talk about my experiences. So when I was interning I was interned at multiple places, but you know, I've experienced like illegal working hours where like working from like 9 a.m. to 2 a.m. With like a half an hour break. I think, you know, those kind of hours that are expected of an intern or just anyone really, is it can become debilitating. You know, like it can then develop into, you know, anxiety, panic attacks. And that's what happened with me. Like it spiraled into like breakdowns and panic attacks, and just the way I was treated was, it just wasn't right. It was like I wasn't like human or anything, and I was definitely being used for my free labor. And you know, from other people I know in the industry, they've had somewhat similar experiences. They haven't had the exact experience because every experience is unique, but they've had experiences where they're not treated right, where they're just treated as like a number, or you know, they definitely don't get paid for what they're doing. I mean, you're lucky if sometimes you might get your travel expenses paid. But yeah, I think just those kind of working hours, the way that people might treat their interns with like, you know, abusive language, it like those kind of ways of being treated as an intern, like you would, like it's obvious like some form of mental ill health or their mental well-being is going to suffer, because that's just not a human way of treating people. one thing that I would say is to really just make sure you take time out for yourself. You know, whether you're embarking in this creative sector to become a business owner, or if you're wanting to be employed by someone else, it's really important to make sure that, you know, we take out at least like a day of the week to just like re-energize, relax, recuperate, because, you know, if we're working all the time, then we, you know, burnout is inevitable, and then, you know, we're not really help to anyone or even ourselves. So that's something that I've really learned to do. It's very hard, especially as a business owner. You know, you're thinking about it 24/7, so it's very hard to shut off. But maybe creating like a sanctuary little space in your home where you can go there and, you know, you can shut off. Or, you know, taking, you know, a couple of hours out in the evening. Like, you know, I have a rule where I turn off my mobile device and try not to look at a screen for at least like an hour before I sleep. Really helps me with my mental health, you know, my mental well-being. Just for me, shutting off from social media, electronics, that's what's really helps me, you know, or even just like taking the step outside, going into some nature, just like really reconnecting with like myself, my body. Yeah, it's just really just taking that time out for yourself. I mean, you know, everyone has their own things that help them. So, you know, maybe going for a walk won't help you. That's okay. Like, you know, it doesn't help everyone. Just finding what helps you, and then just making sure you take the time to do it. It will just be so beneficial for you. Trust me. I actually have a quote from one of my customers, because I thought it would be best to hear it from them really than me, because I'm making it for them. So yeah, so I was going to read out a quote that one of my customers has sent me. So, fashion can often be quite a superficial lens through which we view the world, and yet we are all beautiful, complex individuals with deep feelings of vulnerability, which society all too often encourages us to disguise and hide. Sarah intuitively understands this, and that's why I was so drawn to her work. When I wear my mental health awareness skirt, it speaks to me and the complex flow of emotions we all experience every day. 1 minute confident and open, and the next vulnerable and wanting to hide from the world. The skirt is beautifully raw and unfinished, which speaks to the pain we all experience in moments and phases of our lives. I adore pieces like this that speak to my inner voice. So before the pandemic, my business was purely just bespoke. So it's which includes, you know, coming in face to face, one-to-one fittings. You know, it's definitely a process between me and the customer. And since the pandemic means that you couldn't see anyone in person. So although I still do bespoke, it's a big core of my business. I've also gone into different avenues of creating products where I can make them sellable online, but also still always making sure that I'm highlighting the tailoring craft that goes into each product, and then also with the social issues messaging that comes through. So it's definitely getting the balance of the two, and yeah, so I've been creating new garments that are inspired by the bespoke collections, but are one-off pieces that are either reworked from vintage garments or end-of-line fabric that would have just gone to the landfill otherwise. So it's definitely also bringing in a very sustainable part of it. And then also in terms of just like my creative process, and also just like the process I go through with designing and everything, like it's really made me take a step back and like reflect more. So I really do reflect on every launch that happens, every event that happens, for me to, yeah, just sit down, figure out what went well, what didn't go well, and then how I can improve for the next ones. Yeah, just taking that step back, just being a bit more slower and just reflecting more. That's really definitely come about since the pandemic and lockdown. Well, so I definitely go to podcasts. I have a couple of podcasts that I listen to. So I've got two actually. So one is more like business related, and then one is more just like people's stories, mental well-being. But the work one's interesting because she touches. It's called She Did It Her Way, which you can find on like all big platforms. She really tailors the business around our mental well-being. You know, if our mental well-being's not in the best state it can be, then you know it really mirrors like everything else that's going around. So yeah, I find her episodes really interesting, really motivational, because of course there are times where I'm not feeling that motivated, and you know, I've got to be motivating myself. No one else is going to do it. So yeah, that's a tool that I've got. And then the other podcast is My Happy Place by Vanguards, which I go to for just, yeah, it's really helped me reflect and understand some of the difficulties that I've been facing, or really understanding maybe some of my unhealthy coping mechanisms that have come about through my mental ill health. So that's been a massive game changer. So I do think podcasts are really good. Yeah, and then also just like I have a very small net, close family members and friends who I do go to and I talk to, and they uplift me, and I can talk to them if I'm like struggling. They help me really stay motivated as well. I think it's just having that support around you is just so important. It doesn't have to be family, it can be friends, you know, it can be anybody, but just having that very close net tie of, you know, that circle is just so important to keep motivated, I would say, for me. So like I was saying earlier, I've been creating some new products where they're inspired by this bespoke mental health, bespoke collection, sorry. And they're called series. So series one launched about 2 weeks ago now, and that raises awareness of mental ill health. So to just give a bit of context to the current bespoke collection, that's on mental health, and it raises awareness of seven mental health conditions. And so with the series, each series is inspired by each of those conditions. So the first one was on mental ill health. The series two is going to be on mental well-being. And then series three is going to be on one of the mental health conditions, which I'm planning on it being raising awareness of schizophrenia. So yeah, so there's going to be multiple series, and they're going to be launching every 6 weeks. So series two is going to be launching on the, let me just look at the calendar, it's the 28th of June. That's when it's going to be launching. So yeah, really exciting, really unique pieces. They're one-off pieces, you know, made with end of line rolls of fabrics that would have gone to landfill, or vintage source garments, or even some fabrics that I've collected over like my journeys and experiences where I've been lucky enough to travel to other countries. So yeah, very exciting pieces. That's launching every 6 weeks.